If you have not heard of Vivek Ramaswamy, you are going to get to know him a little bit now. Someone who started at the bottom of the polls for the GOP primary, polling at 0.0%, is now in third place. And whether you agree with his politics or not, this is someone that I think you should pay close attention to, because if he continues on this track, it is very possible that he could surpass Ron DeSantis. In this new 538 poll, you will see here that Trump is at 53.7%, DeSantis 14.3%, and Vivek Ramaswamy is now at 7.5%. That is insane, considering he was all the way at the bottom. So there is something that he is doing that has caused his sudden increase in the polls. Maybe it's the way he's speaking to the American people. Maybe it's the issues that he's addressing. Or maybe it's the fact that he is not a politician. He's a businessman. Does that sound familiar? We're going to get into this interview that Vivek had with Russell Brand. There's two parts I want to focus on here, so you'll get to see a little bit about him and who he is. What was really interesting to me when we look at his campaign, I'm really curious as to why he's not running as an independent. Because there are certain things that are part of his campaign. To me, I'm just kind of like, why not just run as an independent? There are certain issues when you look at his campaign where he actually seems a little bit similar to RFK Jr. when we talk about the FBI. We talk about like these government agencies. But let's hear it for yourself. Why is he running? And do you think that he actually could be a threat to Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump? Let's go in.
First 15 minutes of the conversation while we're on YouTube, we can keep things relatively light. Of course, over the course of our conversation, I'd love to talk to you about your views on Donald Trump and what he does to your candidacy, and indeed anyone who would seek the nomination of the Republican Party. But let's start a little bit with some of the broader points for our audience who are not yet familiar with you. What exactly do you think you can bring to this race? What do you think you can bring to this candidacy? What do you think it's lacking?
So, look, I think that the thing that was missing in the field, the thing that pulled me in, is that I see a Republican Party that for a long time has been running from something. I am leading us to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be an American, to the ideals of the American Revolution that define what this country is all about. And yes, the left is very good at filling the vacuum of purpose and meaning in young people, with race, gender, sexuality, climate. I want us talking more about what we actually stand for: the individual, the family, the nation, God.
Who's God? What do we stand for? See, this is the thing, when you start bringing in things like, the nation, the individual, family, God. Who's God? We don't all have the same religion. Some people aren't religious at all. When I hear the individual, that reminds me, are you talking about capitalism? What are they? What does America stand for? I don't think it's that easy to define. America is a melting pot. We have people from all over the world. So I don't know. I don't know. That sounds to me, it sounds a little cheesy.
This is, I think, actually much more valuable than just criticizing and playing whack-a-mole with everything the other side gives us. And I bring some unique attributes to this. I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman. I have lived the American dream. My parents came to this country with no money.
But his parents were professionals. I have to add this in here because I've seen him say this multiple times, that his parents came here with no money. I've heard this over and over again, that while that may be true, I pulled up the info and I showed you guys before that his parents, though, it's not like your parents are doctors. One's an engineer, a patent engineer. and a doctor. It's not like they weren't PMC. They were PMC. So it's easier to achieve the American dream when you already coming from a position of wealth to begin with. It's easier to achieve the American dream when you already have parents who are educated enough and have those positions to be able to put you through college and have you achieve that same success or even greater. I want to hear from someone who knows what it's like to be poor. So it's easier to achieve the American dream when you already have a wealth net set up for you. Yes, it is easier. So this is not no pull up the bootstraps. He didn't have to pull anything up. That's the point I want to bring across to you. Let's continue.
I have gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. I did it while getting married to my wife, Apurva, raising 2 sons. That's the American dream. It's not a politician's story. And I think it might just take somebody of a different generation to get this job done and actually reaching young Americans, bringing them along, reminding them why we have to be proud of this country, all the reasons we have to be proud of this nation we call home. And you know what? That's a unique combination. Somebody who both comes from the business world, but understands the Constitution deeply. Somebody who cares about this country, but who has also succeeded in living the American dream and who is young and a member of my generation. That's what I'm bringing to this that I think nobody else is. It is what gave me the duty to, I think, it called me into this race, and we will see what God's plan is for us. But for now, we're going to keep doing what I believe is my part, and my heart says we're going to be successful.
Fearless J says on.
What I don't want for people to take away from this, and this is my fear with someone like him running, I'm afraid that people are going to hear his message and they're going to assume that they can too. Oh, if he did it, I can achieve the American dream too. When he's leaving out certain pieces that I think is important for people to know. He's corporate. And it's not like he did not come from some type of wealth background. And I can pull that up for you in a second as well. I don't want people, I've seen the story so many times where someone is running for office and they say, my parents came here with no money in their pocket. First of all, how you get here with no money? If you flew on a plane, if you came on a boat or whatever, you got here somehow. You paid somebody to get here for the transportation, okay? So they kill me when they say they came here with no money in their pocket and they were able to make it. But he leaves out important pieces. You're leaving out the degrees. You're leaving out the college education. Like, so miss me with all of that. Miss me with all that. Remember, he's a businessman, so he can be a good salesman.
Locals. Now we need more senile octogenarians in power. I think that's some tacit support right there. Now you're currently 3rd in the polls. We had Ron DeSantis, the governor, on our show recently, and I get the sense that it must be difficult to find yourself in this position when the conversation is continually dominated by Donald Trump, his easy oratical brilliance, his status as the perennial outsider, although I recognize that you have a comparable background in enterprise and business. How do you tackle the challenges that that Donald Trump's candidacy continues to represent? In a second, once we leave YouTube, which is just in a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you outright, do you believe...
We'll have to skip that part. Sorry. I know there's one part where... Okay, here we go.
Take the America First agenda to the next level. And I'm not blaming him for this. I think it's just a fact that about 30% of this country, probably 30% of the developed world, becomes psychiatrically ill when he is in the White House. And I can't explain it to you because I think a lot of what he did makes total sense to me. In fact, I'm saying many of the same things. In some cases, I'm going far further than he ever did. I've said I would use the military on our southern border. I've said I would shut down departments like the U.S. Department of Education, where he appointed figureheads to try to reform them. So in some ways, it's funny that I'm going further than he is, in some cases saying the exact same things.
He would shut down the Department of Education but he already got his education. You see how this works? Because he went to Harvard. I'm gonna pull it up. He went to Harvard. So he could shut down the Department of Education, but he already got his. Let's continue.
But for whatever reason, maybe it's my age, maybe it's my background, maybe it's the way I say them, I'm not having that effect on people. And that will allow me to go further than Trump did, while also, I think, having the last best chance we have of uniting this country. And you know what? That gives me a sense of enthusiasm and excitement. A lot of people want me to sit here and bash Trump. I'm not going to do that. I respect him. I think he was a great president. I just want to build on that foundation to go further. And I'm pretty happy. I think other candidates might be frustrated. For me, I'm in a different seat. I was at not 0%. I was at 0.0% in March, which is not that long ago when I got into this race. I'm now polling a third.
You guys see what he's doing? So unlike some of his competitors in the GOP primary, he is not criticizing Donald Trump the way that they are. He's not attacking him the way that Ron DeSantis is. He's basically just saying he wants to build on what Donald Trump did. And that, in its sense, that makes me think like maybe some of Trump's base who may be trying to look a different way, but not really feeling Ron DeSantis, maybe they may look at someone like Vivek and say, well, he's not criticizing Donald Trump, but he wants to do a little bit more. Maybe he's able to get some of those people. So if we're talking about strategy, that was actually pretty smart.
In the Republican primary, we haven't even had the first debate yet. So I'm actually pretty happy with how things are going. I'm on the same trajectory that Trump was in 2015. And in many ways, I'm more similar to Trump in 2015 than Trump today is to Trump in 2015. And I think that's exactly why we're going to win this election, probably in a landslide. And I think that's going to be the single most uniting event for this country.
Vivek.
Why does he remind me? You know who he reminds me of? Different policies, of course. But you know who he reminds me of when I listen to him speak? He reminds me of Barack Obama. All of this, unite the country, bring everybody together. We need to go a step further. Listen to him. We're going to go to another clip because they get into the more of the Trump stuff there. We're going to go to another clip. I want you to pay close attention to what he's saying. Younger, energetic kind of dude, just like Obama was. He was younger, at that point in time when he ran, trying to grasp the younger people and things like that. That's who he reminds me of. Let's go in, and then I'm going to show you about where he really comes from. Listen to this.
Where do you think free speech stands in your country, Vivek, at the moment? And what would you do to address this issue?
Well, in 1776, and in principle, free speech is the most important bedrock principle of the United States. The idea that whoever you are, whatever your views are, whatever your opinions are, you get to express them as long as I get to express mine in return. That was the bargain of the American Revolution. This is a radical idea. For most of human history, in old world Europe and in England, it was done the other way. They said that no.
He really reminds me, even his mannerisms, he really reminds me of Barack Obama. But they're talking about censorship and free speech here, this is something where he does agree with RFK Jr. Then also the issue about the FBI and government agencies, he agrees with him about that as well. And that's why I said some of these lines kind of blur. There was also a video on Twitter, I forgot to link it, but there was a video on Twitter where he said, we need to not focus on red versus blue, but he's running in the Republican Party. So to me, it was just kind of like, why aren't you running as an independent?
The people cannot be trusted to speak their minds. In fact, we, the government, cannot trust the people with the truth. We have to tell them noble lies. And if they criticize us for us, they must be suppressed because that's what's required to preserve order and structure in a society. In the United States of America in 1776, we fought a revolution to say it's done the other way. I am sad to say, Russell, that that's not the America that I live in today. The America that I live in today is one where the government deputizes private companies to do through the back door what the government could not do through the front door under the Constitution. Indeed, that is why we are unable right now to have this conversation on YouTube. That is pathetic. That is shameful. That is a hollowed out husk of the country that I grew up in. If George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton were walking the streets of this country today, they would not be proud. They would be appalled.
If they were walking the streets of this country today, you would not be in the position you in right now, because they would have had you be one of their servants. I'm so tired of the people going back to the founding fathers and let's go back to the history of this country and what this country was built on. Violence and mayhem. Let's stop talking about the founding fathers like they were, something we should look up to. Let's keep it real.
At seeing a country that looks more like the kingdom they declared independence from than the country they actually set into motion. And you know what my job is? When I leave office in January 2033, right, I'll be 47, 48 years old. Twice the age Thomas Jefferson was, by the way, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. People forget that. My son will be just entering high school. Young Americans will once again be proud of those radical ideals we used to set this country into motion, rather than being ashamed of them. Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington will once again rest in peace.
Thomas Jefferson was a racist. Oh my God, man. Did you know these people will care nothing about you, man? Nothing about you. They would get nothing about you.
But the only way we're going to get there, the first step we're going to have to take to get there, is to restore the First Amendment itself. And it's in the First Amendment for a reason. We have absolute free speech in this country. There's no opinion that you should not be able to express. That's what absolute free speech means. Doesn't mean you can fraudulently lie to somebody and sell them a product for private gain. Does it mean that you can threaten somebody and then follow through on that threat? No, those aren't opinions. But free speech above all, if it means one thing, it means that all opinions are fair game, and any criticism of the government is also fair game. And yet that's exactly what the government is clamping down on today. And that's exactly what I will restore as the next president.
Free speech for who? Because you see, one of the things that I've noticed when we talk about free speech, and not everyone, but some people, when they champion, they say we need to have free speech. And I agree, we do need to have free speech. It's kind of funny, though, because some of the things that Vivek talks about on his campaign trail is actually not in support of free speech. When he talks about the rhetoric, when he talks about the woke rhetoric, that's not in agreement with free speech. Shouldn't those people have the right to say that too, whether you agree with it or not? So what free speech are we talking about? Because free speech means different things to different people. And I've started to know this. Some people are like, free speech means they should be able to say whatever they want to on social media. They should not be penalized. People should not be deplatformed, yada, yada. But at the same time, some of those same people will want to cancel or will ask social media platforms to cancel certain people who say things that they disagree with. So is it free speech absolutism? Or is it free speech in reference to what you favor and what you agree with? Just something to think about. And I think we have one more piece here.
How do you believe you could transfer those ideals into office when you have agencies like the FBI that have undue, immersive and ubiquitous power? I'd like to draw to your attention, if I may, Vivek, the case of the Newburgh Four, who recently had their convictions overturned, or at least were granted compassionate release after it was revealed, if not publicly proven, that their convictions were based on FBI meddling, that essentially the FBI built a conspiracy, cast them in that conspiracy, in this instance an act of terror, bombings against synagogues, solely that they could arrest these men for that crime. Now they've subsequently subsequently been released. When we turn our attention to the events of January 6th, where we know that the FBI had operatives and agents within that crowd, how can we be certain that the FBI were not participating in exaggerating, amplifying, and encouraging the events that are now subject to so much scrutiny and controversy to this day? And indeed, does this not indicate that along with big tech, agencies like the FBI and the CIA, who deeply penetrated big tech organizations and participated in the manipulation that you earlier described, will still have power? What would you do to limit the power of the FBI and the CIA and deep state agencies elsewhere and bureaucratic bodies that throughout the COVID pandemic period behaved atrociously? What would you do to limit that power? And if you have time to comment on the particular case, the Nuremberg 4, I'd be interested in what you think about that and how it pertains to January 6th. Was January 6th an insurrection?
Well, we got to pause here. I'm sorry. Russell Brand has really long questions, but what he's basically saying is, what would you do in reference to the
I think
FBI?
you just scratched the surface. This is just part of a broader pattern. I'm going to answer your question. Before I do, I want people to know this is not a partisan answer. And the reason I'll tell you it's not a partisan answer is the examples you gave, Russell, are solid examples grounded in appropriate skepticism and fact. But they will say, no, that's just conservative grievance. So let me just give you even further back. The same FBI that will not tell us how many field agents, likely hundreds, if I have to guess, were on the ground on January 6th, is the same FBI that lied to us directly to the face of the people about what happened on 9/11. You think this is third rail stuff? Probably YouTube wouldn't allow this either.
Yep, and we're gonna move on from that. I think this is
down that FBI. I've offered unprecedented detail on the legal authority that who would have ever thought the president of the United States, who runs the executive branch of the government, can actually run the executive branch of the government. Radical idea. Turns out it's grounded in the law and the Constitution. I've also laid out the exact plan. I don't want people to suffer for risk of drugs or child trafficking. There's 35,000 employees in the FBI. 20,000 of them are not on the front lines. They sit in the J. Edgar Hoover building at the FBI. That's where the political rot begins. Those people will have to go home and find honest work in the private sector. The 15,000 or so agents who are on the front lines, we will redeploy them at the U.S. Marshals, a separate agency that has not yet been corrupted. They've been very good at child sex trafficking cases in bringing those much more effectively than the FBI has. Put them there. Put them in the Drug Enforcement Agency, which has been much more effective in fighting the fentanyl spread in this country. Put them in the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, tackling complex white-collar crime and theft. So this is deeply practical, actually. The FBI, part of the point is it was redundant when it was created. It is redundant today. And when you have redundant bureaucracies, that's actually the formula for systematic corruption, which is exactly what we see. And Russell, I think that gets to the heart of the choice in this GOP primary. There's absolutely a choice that voters will have to make. Do they want incremental reform, or do they want revolution? I stand on the side of revolution, the American Revolution. If you want incremental reform, go with somebody else.
So I wanted everybody to hear that. I wanted everybody to hear what he just said there. So he's not in favor of the FBI. And this goes into another piece here. I just want to bring this up. We can come back to this in just a second. But he's letting you know, if you want incrementalism, you need to go with someone else. He's on the side of revolution. He's running through the Republican Party. Why don't we have anybody running through the Democratic Party that's willing to say they're on the side of revolution? I'm not talking about no Bernie Sanders political revolution. Why don't we have anybody doing that? Think about that for a second. Now, in reference to, I don't know what happened there. Oh, let me go back to that. I'm sorry. I thought that was ready, but it's not up here. Hold on. Uh-oh. I'll come back to it. There's a link missing. Anyway, let me let him finish and then we'll come back. Sorry about that. Whoopsie-doo.
If you want a quantum leap to revolution, that's what I'm actually bringing. Not violent revolution, but a revival of the ideals of the American Revolution. Yes, radical ideals that in 1776 gave birth to this nation. I stand for the radicalism of the American Revolution. And that's very different than the other candidates in this race.
And maybe that's why he's now in third place. Now, another thing that he brought up, and some of you are going to laugh at this one. He believes in civic duty voting. Now, this is a little bit different. I'm going to read this piece right here. He said that the U.S. faces a 25% recruitment deficit in the military, and just 16% of Gen Z say they're proud to be an American. The absence of national pride is a serious threat to our republic's survival. At a time when young Americans are taught to celebrate their differences, civic duty voting, and in particular the service path, creates a sense of shared purpose and experience. Nah, like military recruitment deficit should continue. Young people shouldn't have to sign up to join the military. We should be ending these wars and not encouraging people to get involved in them. Now, when you click on civic duty voting here, this is the piece I want you to see. He believes this is what he wants to do. Vivek supports a constitutional amendment to implement civic duty voting among Americans aged 18 to 25. In substance, this amendment will increase the standard voting age to 25, while still allowing all Americans to vote at age 18 if they meet a national service requirement, at least 6 months in the military or a first responder role, or pass the same civics tests required of naturalized citizens. The fuck? No. Like, it's just, here he is basically trying to help increase military recruitment. That's clown shit. Like, no. If people want to join, they'll join. You see that? So you're old enough at 18 to join the military and go fight these wars. But if you want to vote at 18, you either need to pass the civics test that he said is required for naturalized citizens, or you need to meet that national service requirement where you have to do at least 6 months in the military. Sounds like a backdoor draft. It goes on to say voting will remain open to citizens starting from the age of 18 who are U.S. and have demonstrated civic information in at least one of several ways: direct service in the country in the military or first responding service, police, fire, etc. Now you trying to help out the police state. Passed a civics test identical to the U.S. citizenship exam for naturalized citizens, or reached the age of 25. The other two are less likely to happen. People who are 18 are probably going to be less likely to take this test, and they're going to be less likely to join the military since they're less likely to join it now, which means what he's really trying to do is push the voting age overall to 25. Vivek, he's out here rapping Eminem. I don't know how to take this dude. Vivek Ramaswamy raps Eminem's "Lose Yourself" at the Iowa State Fair. I can't play it because of the music, but here it is. What? I told you he reminds me of Barack Obama. I'm not kidding. We've seen this before. What is this? Now on to the fam, because I told you he likes to tell this story about coming from, they came here with nothing in their pocket. Let's talk about the pockets. So if you, all you got to do is Google him. Let's go to the family. I'm going to show you what they came here with. Okay. Look at this. He was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, to Indian Hindu immigrant parents who was raised in Ohio. Okay. This part right here, when we get to the employment, because I want you to understand, it's not like he came from working class. His father, V.G. Ramaswamy, a graduate of the National Institute of Technology, Calicut. Okay. So he already had the degrees needed. Let me continue. Worked as an engineer and a patent attorney for General Electric, while his mother, Geeta Ramaswamy, a graduate of the Mysore Medical College and Research Institute, worked as a geriatric psychiatrists, doctors, and engineers. So the next time you hear him say, my parents came here with nothing in their pocket, make sure you say they came here with degrees, bitch. They came here with degrees and they were ready to roll, okay? It's not like you came here working class. Sorries. Here's one more thing I do want to show you as well. I want to make sure I don't forget this. Now, here's another strategy. It's different. This strategy is mad different. And I know people are already starting to criticize it, but I want to explain to you why this may actually not hurt him. Check this out. We talking about the federal jobs. So listen to this. Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy says he'll cut 75% of the federal employee workforce. Now, some people saw this and was like, is he crazy? Is he trying to lose or is he trying to win? Right? Let's think about this. Where do the majority of federal employees work? Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. As a GOP candidate, he wouldn't win those places anyway. He wouldn't win Maryland. He wouldn't win Virginia. Probably wouldn't win Virginia. It'd be hard to win Virginia now as a Republican. Wouldn't win Virginia, and he wouldn't win D.C. DC's hardcore blue. Maryland is hardcore blue. Virginia is more of a Carolina blue, a lighter blue. But he wouldn't win those. The DMV. So if that's something he really wants to do, cut 75% of the federal employee workforce, that also includes the FBI, which he mentioned in the Russell Brand interview, that he wanted to get rid of those FBI agents, the 20,000 something that are just sitting in the building, and they're going to have to go get jobs in the private sector. I don't know. Different strategy, different campaign. I think he should be running as an independent, but he probably wouldn't get the type of attention that he's getting if he was running as an independent. But he kind of seemed all over the place. But he reminds me of Barack Obama. And that should scare a lot of you. That should scare a lot of you guys. I can interview him if you want. And I would tell him that. You remind me of Barack Obama. I've seen this before, boo. Let me take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. He said the individual and family, but not the community or workers. He is against reparations and uses the meritocracy argument against it, railing against affirmative action. So let's press him. Okay, merit system. Let's ask, will you end not only legacy admission, but inherited wealth as well? I mean, the heirs didn't earn that wealth. Vivek, hate to tell you, kissing up to Trump won't save you from Trump. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you for this as well. Sab, American people won't fall for this line of, hey, if he made it, then maybe I can too. We've already been through that, and this is where we ended up. Have faith every time you say that youngins come through. Also, people like Vivek think that the government is not supposed to help us. They ignore the first enumerated power in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, financing the general welfare. Preamble promotes it. And thanks for this as well. Sab, in case no one knows, the U.S. Constitution is amended by 290 House 66 U.S. senators, passed a resolution, then sent to the states. Once both state legislatures of 34 states ratify it, then it gets archived at the archivist. An amendment is done. The other way is 34 states agree on a subject, then 38 ratify. Presidents can use bully bullpit, but other than that, they aren't involved in the process. And I'll go to the comments here. Thank you. Whoops, I didn't start from the top. Sorry about that. Sean says he's a good candidate, won't win, but a good candidate. Interesting. Dwayne says DeSantis' anti-woke message can't carry a campaign. He keeps sinking in the polls. Thank you, American. Vivek is speaking the language of American exceptionalism to white America. This is the same drivel RFK Jr. spouts that doesn't apply to all Americans. Frank, people talking about the American dream scare me. I know, right? Thank you for this as well. Wow, he needs to stop talking. And thank you, American. People like Vivek are the reason why Black Americans are becoming so anti-immigration. There can be no unity or solidarity until this is addressed. JB, and just for $19.99, you too can buy this big, beautiful free speech. So vote for me for this low, low price. Aisha, thank you. He doesn't sound like just anyone who had to work for what they have. He sounds self-absorbed and out of touch with the rest of us, another Obama. Yeah. Thank you, Frank. Someone needs to tell him about this country. Thank you, Leprechaun Ally. Sabrina, I can't help myself. Vivek and Obama are both Leos. Year of the Buffalo. Nailed it with God, too. I almost fell out of my chair. You're such a beacon and so connected. Oh, thank you, Leprechaun. And thank you, Daniel. Check out his graduation speech from high school. He's always well-spoken. Also, he's against legacy admissions and wants to end war. Interesting, Daniel. I don't know why I said it like that, Daniel. I'm sorry. And thank you, Roger. PO, biggest Fed employer plus 4 Black peeps also, the post office. Thank you.